Welcome to Gamin' Grains, the whiskey gaming channel. I'm your player one, Richard. A few weeks ago, I did a review on Sazerac's 100 proof straight rye whiskey. Now, truth be told, I went into it with very low expectations, but by the end of the review, I was very surprised on just how nice this whiskey tastes. So that got me thinking, how would it stack up against other big name distilleries' 100 proof straight rye whiskeys? So today we're going to do a blind where I pit these three together and let you know which one of them, in my opinion, is the best 100 proof straight rye whiskey. So grab your controllers, pour yourself a dram, and let's get into it. Now, before we get into this, let's review what exactly a straight rye whiskey is. First and foremost, in its mash bill, it must have a minimum of 51% rye grain. It must be aged for a minimum of 2 years in a new charred oak barrel. When distilled, it must be no higher than 160 proof, with its barrel entry proof no higher than 125. At time of bottling, it must be a minimum of 80 proof, and if it is aged less than 4 years, it must be designated somewhere on the bottle. Now that is important for us to know as we start to dive into each of these individual bottles. Now that we understand the criteria for what makes up a straight rye whiskey, let's dive a little bit deeper into each one of these bottles. Now, first we have over here is the Sazerac 100 proof. Now, if you're familiar with the Sazerac Buffalo Trace family of products, then you know that they keep that mash bill and the age statements of most of their products close to the vest. But knowing that criteria, we can assume that this has at least 51% of rye grain and has been aged for a minimum of 4 years in a new charred oak barrel. Moving right along, we do get a little bit more information from this Old Forester. We don't have an age statement, but we do know that it has a mash bill of 65% rye, 20% malted barley, and 15% corn. So with that slightly higher rye in the mash bill, we're probably going to pick up a little bit more of those rye notes. So more baking spices, probably a little bit of mint, dill, cardamom, black pepper, things like that. At least that's what we can expect just from the mash bill. Lastly, Knob Creek 7-year. Now, it says right on the bottle, the age statement, they do have other age stated ryes, but today we're looking at that 7-year. Now, it has a mash bill of 55% rye, 35% corn, and 10% malted barley. So just based on that information, we can assume that this one's probably going to be a little bit sweeter with that higher corn percentage in this mash bill. But we're not going to know until we get into these. Now, before I started filming or even getting things ready, I did number the bottles on the bottom and then poured the corresponding liquid into numbered glens. Now, the numbers are on the bottom. I did have them sitting on the table behind me and move them around before getting settled in for filming. So this truly is a blind. Now we're going to first start off with my left and work my way from left to right, and I'll give you tasting notes along the way. So first one we're going to do is in my Old Dominick Glen. So right off the bat, I'm getting the faintest bit of almost like banana pudding. There is some underlying cinnamon, some other rye notes. But I will say that for being 100 proof, this guy right here is very fragrant, very pungent, has a very strong odor, for lack of a better word, compared to what I would expect from a 100 proof rye. I would expect to have a lot subtler of a nose. Now we're going to go ahead and get in on Blue Note. This one is the middle on the nose. So this one is milder. Excuse me. Some of those same notes that are there, I'm not getting that banana, but I am getting a slight minty note. Some of those other rye spices, almost like a black pepper. The more I spend time in this, it does seem stronger. Not as sweet as the Old Dominic, at least on the nose. So moving on to the last one, the content creator, formerly known as the Whiskey Shaman, Glenn. That one's weird. Citrus note, grass. There is a slight, I don't want to say burn, but there is, it's almost like there's no sweetness. It's like, I enjoy a good Reuben, and if you're familiar with what a Reuben is, it's served on a rye bread. That's what I'm getting on this, is just that straight rye note that I would get from eating a Reuben. I'm not getting a lot of sweetness on this at all. So that makes me wonder. So this one is very odoriferous, very pungent as far as the nose goes. This one does seem a little bit sweeter. This one I am getting a little bit more rye notes on it. Whereas this one right here, to me, is just straight rye. So now that we've gone through those, we're going to go ahead and get in on the taste. So back to the left. Still going with those, like light banana note. All right, in on the taste. Cheers. So I should mention that I have been a little bit under the weather, so my palate might be off a little bit, but I do get some of those traditional rye notes. There is a little bit of like a grassy note there, but I am getting sweetness and really weird banana pudding, which is not something that I would typically associate with a rye whiskey. There is a bit of oakiness to it, which really is kind of putting me, I've had an Old Forester single barrel before, and I get tons of banana on it. So this is making me believe that this could be an Old Forester product, but put a little asterisk next to that, because all I've only had besides this rye has been an Old Forester single barrel. So right now, I'm going to say this is Old Forester. I will say that it is drying on the tongue. The flavors sit almost to like the back of the front of the tongue, if that makes sense, where I would imagine that that would come into the middle palate, and it is a little bit drying. So that's what leads me to believe that it is going to be some of those oaky tannins that are there. So moving into the middle glass, Blue Note. So again, there is that citrus note that is there, which I would come to I've recognized from some other lighter rye whiskeys. So let's get in on the taste. Cheers. Okay. Whereas this one was very pungent and in my face as far as the palate goes, and then the flavor It's kind of stuck with the nose. This one does too. This one is not as in my face. It does have some of those citrus notes, almost like a lemon tart or a lemon meringue pie or something like that is what I'm getting. On the finish, it does not linger as much as this one. You get the notes that I described from the tasting, and then it just very quickly dissipates. Right now I'm getting a little bit of that citrus on the tongue. I kind of have an idea as far as where I think this one goes. We'll make final guesses in a moment. On to the last glass. This is the one that I described as almost like the rye notes that you would get from like eating a Reuben. Okay, just that rye bread notes, just very flat as far as sweetness goes. Just very straightforward rye. Cheers. All right. So just like with the nose, not a whole lot of sweetness, very rye forward. Just kind of lands flat. I'm getting, again, just rye spice, almost like an earthy note to it, a little bit of grass. So if I had to rank them on flavor alone, this one would probably be last. So nose, flavor, finish, if we're giving them a place, this would be third place. I'm tied on these two. Now going back to this, after having sampled the three, I am picking up a little bit more caramel, almost butterscotch on this one. But those wood tannins are there. That slight banana note is there. This one, I'm getting a little bit more citrus on. This one was my favorite, but now having gone through all of them, I'm going to have to say that this one's probably second place. And this one will be first. All right, so now we need to know which is which. So in my first place, the one that has the more robust nose, the one that I'm getting banana from, the one that just seems to really linger and hang out the longest, I am saying is Old Forester. And we'll check the bottoms here in a moment. I think that the one that has more lemon to it, that I feel is a similar mash bill to things that I've tried before, is going to be this Knob Creek. And then lastly, this one that, at least for today, falls flat is going to be the Sazerac. Now, I will go ahead and tell you, like I shared before, I have been a little under the weather, and so that greatly impacts these. Normally when I try ryes, at least these, I do get some slightly sweeter notes, so I'd love to come back to them later. But for today, so Old Dominick is number 3. Let's see, Old Forester, number 3. So I nailed these two. And like I said before, when I've only had an Old Forester single barrel bourbon, and I got a lot of banana on it. And so that similar banana note that I got with the rye is really what kind of led me to believe that is what that one is. All right, Blue Note Glen is number 2. I said it's Knob Creek. It does taste very familiar, similar to a mash bill that I've had from other products. So Oh, okay. So this is number 1. So that means that if we're looking at the bottles, Sazerac, it's kind of hard to see. I didn't show you the number of the last one. Number 2. All right. So my second place, as far as flavor and nose goes to Sazerac. And then lastly, number 1 is Knob Creek. And in my Shaman Glen, I have Knob Creek. Now, am I surprised by the results? A little. I did play with these before. Knob Creek was not my favorite, and so that is not too surprising there. The last bottle that I picked up and truly started to kind of dive into was this Old Forester. I did not get a lot of the banana that I got in today's blind, so that's very surprising for me there. And the fact that Sazerac came right in the middle is not too surprising. That would probably be where I would put it anyway. So, all right, guys. Well, it was a little bit longer of a video, but you got my takes on these 3 100 proof rye whiskeys. Now, have you done a blind similar to this? If so, share with me down in the comments. What is your favorite 100 proof rye? I know that, like I mentioned before, Knob Creek makes a 10-year. Wonder how that would pair or compare to these other 2 bottles here. Is there one that maybe that I am missing that I need to go out and seek and add to this list of 100 proof rye whiskeys? Make sure you leave that information down below in the comments. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel to catch more great content like this. If you have some ideas, please feel free to share with me and let me know. Share this channel with your friends, family, and other whiskey enthusiasts. And then lastly, please make sure that you like this video. That just really helps drive the channel and makes it more visible on YouTube. All right, guys, I certainly appreciate you sticking along until the end. I'm your favorite player one, Richard. Have a good one.